You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. Gee, sounds like I'm losing it there. As somebody let me out of the rubber room there and took off the thing. What's going on? I sound crazy in the voice there. Anyway, guys, welcome to the big show. As always, we have the smartest people on the show. Damn it, or else, always. Like, that's the whole reason you listen to us. That, or you like my idiot comedy, which is really awful when it comes down to it. But I don't know, sometimes dying is funnier than killing. Anyway, guys, we have an amazing young lady on the show. We're going to be talking about her hot new book that's coming to the presses and some of her insights and experience. It's a book that comes out March 4th, 2025. But now that I've teased you with it, I have to tell you, refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go to Goodreads.com. Lawyers said I have to say this. YouTube.com/Chris Voss. LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss. Chris Voss 1, the TikTok, and Chris Voss. Facebook.com. Anyway, she is an amazing young lady. Cassidy Randall joins us on the show. Her book out March 4th, 2025, that you can pre-order now and get it wherever fine books are sold, is called 30 Below, the harrowing and heroic story of the first all-women's ascent of Denali. The mountain, that is. That's not in the title of the book. I just added that for fun there, folks. Anyway, we're going to be talking about her and her insights, her experience, and her tracking this history. So there you go. Cassidy Randall is an award-winning writer who tells stories on the environment and adventure and people who expand human potential. I guess that's why I made her list. I destroy human potential, I guess. She's the author of the new Survivor epic, 30 Below, and she also wrote the first all-women's... Oh, okay, there you go. And she also wrote The Hard Parts with Paralympian Oksana Masters. There you go. I'm having a brain fart tonight, which won the Alex Award from the American Library Association, was listed as one of the best sports books of the year by the Times. That's pretty awesome. Her stories have appeared in Rolling Stone, Vanity Fair, National Geographic, The New York Times, Time Magazine, Outside, and Men's Journal, among others, and she's been awarded the Lowell Thomas Gold Medal in Adventure Writing, shortlisted for True Story Award, and included in the year's Best Sports Writing. Good to know people are still reading books. Welcome to the show, Cassidy. How are you?
I am better now that you called me young. I'm really honored. I know I have the voice of a 12-year-old girl, but I also appreciate that.
There you go. I mean, it doesn't sound quite 12, but I don't talk to 12-year-olds. I'm not like on Chris Hansen's show yet. But, yeah, I mean, you sound young. You look young. Run with it.
Well, thanks. I will.
So, Cassidy, give us your .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs?
Yes, I am at CassidyRandall.com, which is where you can also find my books. And I write on the Wilder Path at Substack, and you can find me on Instagram, too.
There you go. The Insta, as the kids call it. I don't know if the kids call it the Insta, but whatever. So give us a 30,000 overview of what's inside your new hot book.
Yes. So this book, which is called 30 Below, you can, if you're watching, you can disregard my hot pink or hot yellow bookmark in there. But it is not just about the first all-women's ascent of Denali. It was about the first all-women's ascent of any of the world's big peaks. And context is important here. So by 1970, when this climb happened, we had sent men to the moon, and women hadn't stood on the highest points on Earth.
Oh, wow.
And
why do women hate mountains? No, I'm just teasing. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly, right? Why was it that they weren't allowed, essentially? So
they weren't allowed?
I would say they were not welcome.
Okay, there you go. It was that was kind of in the age where I remember there was in the 70s there was a marathon, and there was the woman who ran the first marathon. She kind of hijacked it.
Catherine Switzer.
And they were attacking her. And I was like, what the fuck?
Yes,
Like,
she ran the
rude.
first marathon.
Yeah.
The race organizer exited a bus, ran after her, yanked on her to pull her out of the race, and her boyfriend, who was running with her, who was a 235-pound ex-football player, body blocked the race director so she could keep running.
Good. That's good. Everyone's got to run. Everyone's got to learn to run for the hills when that time comes. So, what made you interested in this story?
So many things. One was, if this was such a big deal, why had we never heard of this before, right? It should have been somewhere in our collective consciousness, in our history, and we hadn't. And there are a few reasons for that. And the other thing was that it was this incredible survival story. Like, this was not just they wandered up a peak. There was so much at play, and it was so fast-paced and really cool to get to tell that story. It was really fun to write.
Yeah. And so how did you discover the story? How did it come to you?
I wish that it was a lightning bolt moment, but it was an email from my agent, and she had sent me a link, and all she wrote was, "Is there a good story here?" And the link was this National Park Service blog post from 2022 or something. And it was just a 500-word write-up of this climb celebrating the 50th anniversary of it. And that's when I landed on it, just thought, this is something I should have heard about. I had been writing about adventure and women's issues for years by then, and was floored that I'd never even seen this.
Yeah. And there's the great thing about a lot of, and kind of the great thing about COVID, if you can say there's a great thing about it, is there's so many great books that got written. And so we've just had just an amazing run of thousands of stories. And a lot of them were lost in history. And so that's why we need journalists like you and people to write these books. Is there's so many, they just basically, in school, I think our history lesson was, there's a bunch of old guys and they signed a document, and then there was like a war, and then we were like a country. All right, keep moving. It wasn't that bad. We have wonderful teachers too. I shouldn't talk poorly about teachers, but no, histories. There's a lot of stories, and people have stories, and that's why we love the show. Is people bring their stories on, and you learn stuff about history. There was a lot of history that got left out, and so it's great that you discovered these stories. Denali, I recently heard about Denali because it's January 2025 for you watching YouTube 10 years from now, assuming we're still operating everything. Denali was being renamed, or it's supposed to be renamed. They might be fighting it in court. Evidently, Alaska isn't happy about it. But what is Denali as a mountain, and why is it important? Why are people renaming the thing? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting that as one of his first acts in office, Trump decided to rename a mountain, which maybe there were more important things. Just saying. But so Denali, it means in Koyukon Athabascan, the Great One. And it had been called Denali and intertwined with this pursuit, mountaineering, that mainstream culture has long romanticized. I mean, you think about the first people who were watching the first ascents in the Alps with binoculars from the valley floor, right, in like the 1800s, to our modern obsession with Everest. And so the fact that Denali was already intertwined with mountaineering before Congress had nonsensically renamed it Mount McKinley in 1896, somewhere around there.
Oh,
nonsensically, because McKinley he's never seen the mountain.
No one even cared. I don't even know who he is. He's like some 1800s president that I don't know. I don't even know what he did. Like,
right.
Like, how does he get a mountain? Like, why don't we put up a mountain for, I don't know, John F. Kennedy or something? Does John F. Kennedy have a mountain? People like
he does not.
Oh, well, let's get him a mountain.
As far as I know, actually.
There you go. I mean, he was the guy who started the space race, the golden age of America. Ask not what you can do, yada yada yada, and they started the whole space thing, and like phones and everything we have is from. Let's name that Denali. But anyway, so Denali is the highest point in North America. So it's basically like our Everest sort of thing.
It is, which, does make it really important in our national consciousness, right? Yeah. But what's interesting is even over the century that it was named McKinley, so Obama restored the name Denali in 2015.
That's what this is
yes,
about. I get
yes.
it now. Okay.
And so, but even over that century that it was called McKinley, climbers, Alaskans, a lot of Americans didn't call it McKinley. They still called it Denali because
It's
it
a
was,
great name.
yeah, it's a great name.
Yeah.
And so,
Denali.
a lot of Alaskans and climbers have already come forward to say that they will keep calling the mountain Denali. There's not really much to be done about that.
I just like it. It's a punchy name, Denali. It like says, "I'm going to kick your ass if you don't respect me."
And that mountain will.
And yeah, there you go. It's kind of like Everest. I will kill you, but you can try. You can try to climb me. Tell us about these women. Were you able to interview them? I know the story is older. Were you able to interview them and get their story? At first, when I got the book, I thought you might have been one of the climbers, but then I saw that it was this was done a few years ago. So.
And yeah, in 1970.
And you're a 12-year-old girl, according to your voice. So
it's not on the mountain.
I just assume. I'm like, well, they probably don't have 12-year-olds climbing Denali. So yeah.
Now I bet they would, but
That's
not
true.
then. So these women, so there are 6 women who did this, and only 2 of them are still alive. Arlene Bloom, who lives in California, and she was the deputy leader, and Margaret Clark, who lives in New Zealand. And I would just want to say that I would like to be like Margaret Clark when I grow up. She's probably 90 now. She's only just now starting to lose her mobility. She's really pissed off about it. But she refuses to use a walker, and instead she has a hiking pole in every room.
Really? That's pretty awesome. A hiking pole in every room. I'm going to do that. I had a friend who had some back injuries from a car accident. Somebody hit him. And I remember seeing him walking with a cane. I was like, dude, you should why don't you get a wheelchair for sometimes when you roll around? He's like, dude, once you go to the wheelchair, you're never going to stand again. And it's all about quality life. And I was like, yeah, so good on her that she's putting up a good fight there.
Yeah. So they both had their own sides of the stories that they could tell. And then I had these archives from Grace Homan, who I could have written an entire book about. You could actually base a really phenomenal novel on Grace Homan's life. But her life was archived at the University of Alaska in Anchorage. And it is incredible what is in there. Her letters, her climbing journals, and her husband's.
Oh, wow.
It did make me think about, can you imagine if somebody was trying to write a book like this today? Like, what would you mind? Our emails, our texts, like things we don't even keep.
Yeah. And so you got to peruse through her journals and everything else. Why did they decide to do it? Were they trying to do something like the marathon young lady we talked about? Or were they just doing it because they're like, hey, we're one of those mountains people and we take mountains?
Yeah, they all had different stakes, which is also why I love this story. They were all really complicated, different women. Grace, whose idea it was to do this, had been turned back twice on Denali before this, and both times in these really sort of harrowing situations. And she was the only woman on those teams both times. And she suspected it was because she was a woman that she was turned back. But then, and some of this is, all of it really is archived as well. This story, this heartbreaking story plays out in Grace's journals and her letters and her husband, Ben Homan's, where in 1969, Grace wanted to go on this expedition to the Himalaya to Dhaulagiri 1, which then was one of the hardest peaks in the Himalaya to climb. And her husband, Vin, was going, a well-known Alaskan mountaineer. And he then put Grace forward for the team. I mean, she had a ton of experience. She climbed on several continents. She had a bunch of first ascents, some of them solo. And she was a doctor, which was really helpful on these expeditions. And the team leader writes back to Vin and says that, no, Grace won't be going. In fact, she has illusions of grandeur and she has light experience, bars her from the expedition. And then Vin on that expedition dies in an avalanche. He never comes home from the Himalaya. And Grace has this wild survivor's guilt where she starts to think, what if I had been there? Would I have made different decisions and he wouldn't have been in that spot? What if any woman had been on that expedition? What would happen on an all women's expedition?
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a great way to beat the system back then, because since, some of that sexism was going on, and you just take all women. No one's going to kick you off the team then. Well, I don't know, maybe, but, still. Not over your sex, women
Right.
sometimes.
Well, and that's what I think is so wild. Like 1970 wasn't that long ago, right? That's pretty modern history.
It feels like it was a
History
long
stuff.
time ago. I gotta tell you.
That's, I guess it does.
I was born in '68.
Okay.
57. I'm feeling it. I'm
But
feeling
I
Nixon
mean,
still. Yeah.
what I think, but what I think is amazing about that is that there's still, even in 1970, like the narrative was that women were physically and emotionally too weak to do this. They couldn't withstand high altitudes or savage elements or climb with carrying these heavy loads without men's help. And everyone knew that their periods made them weaker and prone to hysteria on a monthly basis, right? So that's what I think also is amazing about this is these women were doing something that everybody told them was impossible.
Yeah. Was there fanfare behind this? Because I mean, it had to be like I've seen that marathon, first woman who ran a New York Marathon video like a billion times. Like I've seen it so many times over the years. The how did this get news coverage? Was this a big deal, or did they not promote it, or what was the how come more people didn't hear about this?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different reasons, but no, there was only local coverage for the most
Really?
part of the climb.
A
So,
couple chicks climbed the mountain,
right?
that
I mean,
sort of
it's
thing.
kind of
Wow.
wild that no national news covered it.
Wow.
What I think is interesting though is the timing. So this climb unfolded 2 months before August 1970, which is when the women's strike for equality, when
Mm.
all these women marched down Fifth Avenue with linked arms, put second wave feminism on the map. And I think had the climb unfolded maybe in the summer after that, it might have gotten a lot more attention, right? In the fevered
Yeah.
days of this new movement. But the other is that sometimes these stories of failure serve to prop up whatever narrative we want to tell much better than stories of success. And so
Mm.
the fact, especially when you're talking about boundary breakers, right, who are breaking boundaries that a lot of people don't want them to break.
Yeah.
And so Arlene read 2 years after this climb about another first all women's ascent on Denali in 1972. And it was in the LA Times, a major national newspaper, covered it. And what they covered, though, was the fact that several of the women on that expedition died. And they didn't mention the survivors, and they didn't mention that the women had made it to the summit,
Wow.
which is
So they
wild.
had.
They had.
Yeah. Wow.
But they also weren't the first all women's ascent. It was Arlene's trip the 2 years before that.
Wow. Oh, so that second one made the. Wow,
Yeah.
that's unfortunate. Yeah, you know. I mean, nowadays, thank God, there's social media and there's a democratization where you can post videos of doing. Did they? I mean, imagine they took some pictures. There's one on the cover of your book.
Yes, there
Maybe
are
video.
some.
Maybe.
No video.
No video?
What's also really interesting is this was 1970, right?
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
is.
we had great.
Somebody, the cameras are like 5 trillion pounds.
Yeah, your camera weighs a ton.
That's a good point.
But I mean, these were women who apparently never even called each other on the phone. Everything is just over letters. So I would have been
Really?
shocked if they hauled a video camera up.
Really? Yeah, that's true. My mind farted on the concept of, yeah, they didn't have I was like, well, couldn't they afford iPhones in the 70s? Stupid Chris. Anyway, so you tell this great story. It's kind of like, it's almost like, I don't know, like nowadays you hire a PR agent for everything and you get him to tell your story, no matter how inane it might be. I've never climbed Denali. So my PR agent's like, he's some idiot with a mic, and I don't know, he pays me, and I just try and I have pity for him. So yeah, it's unfortunate they weren't like asked to the White House or anything. I mean, it's kind of a momentous thing. I mean, this is dangerous stuff. You can fucking die. You're just not putting your life on the line. And then worst case scenario, your body's stuck up there like on Everest, where there's people up there been up there 100+ years.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, bodies are just now melting out that people are finding.
Yeah. Come to think of it, this might be a way to get out of some debts by faking a climb to.
I climb on a high altitude.
Where's this Denali located at again? Alaska. Like to announce that I'm leaving. Anyway, so as we go out, what do you hope people come away with the book? What do you hope people learn from it, and anything maybe we missed?
I think that there's a couple last points I want to make. One is that I invite whoever's listening to think about how many books like Into Thin Air, The Wager, Endurance, like our greatest exploration and adventure stories in the literary canon, feature women. Like I could maybe name one or two. And so that is really wild to me that we have this void in the literary canon of strong female stories. But then the second point I want to make is that we don't read those stories like Into Thin Air and Endurance because they're male-focused stories, right? We read them because there's damn good adventure stories, which is what this one is. I mean, there's some gender stuff in it because that's just what the women were facing. That was telling them they couldn't do all this stuff. But in the end, it's just a really good adventure story.
Yeah. And a climbing story. If you love climbing, you love snow. Like I have friends, they love hiking, they love climbing. I'm just like, oh, I'll sit over here with my bag of Doritos and watch you guys on the video you post on Facebook. That's cute. But people that do this, I understand the same sort of thing, the mental discipline, the challenge, doing something that, few people have done and sometimes facing death. It's what's that old line from Marcus Aurelius? Death smiles at us. The best you can do is smile back.
Right.
And bring it. Anyway, probably shouldn't encourage death, but it's how I roll. Anyway, come to think of most of my life, it is how I've rolled, encouraging death. But there you go. I start a podcast. That's safe. Although, I don't know, there's probably something that will kill me. Maybe the mic will kill me one day. It will turn on me with AI. Anyway, so give us your .coms as people find out can find out more about you on social media, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, I am at CassidyRandall.com. You can find my books there. I am on Substack at The Wilder Path. I am on Instagram. And you guys, I did just join TikTok because I feel like I got to figure it out. So
yeah. Welcome to the one thing you want to be careful. I'd warn people about who are newly joining TikTok is be careful. That thing can turn into addiction where you're just like, I'm gonna watch a couple TikToks before I go to bed, and you're sitting there laying there with your pillow, and then all of a sudden the sun's up, and you're like, what the fuck happened? It can do that to you during COVID, man. I would wake up and the sun would be up, or I wouldn't wake up. The sun would be up, and I'm like, I spent 4 hours swiping. And you're just like, just one more. It's just 30-second, videos. Just one more. That's funny, And so be careful.
I'll work on avoiding that.
It's one of those cults that'll pull you in, and I love TikTok. So there you go. Anyway, do we get paid for ads with them? I don't know. We should. I don't know. Call the Chinese. That's a TikTok joke. Anyway, thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, Cassie. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And order up her book wherever fine books are sold. You can pre-order it now for March 4th, 2025. 30 Below, the harrowing and heroic story of the first all-women's descent of Denali. I mean, these women went after 30 below. I can't even stand 30 degrees Fahrenheit. That's freezing for me. So good for them. Anyway, guys, go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTokity, and all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.